Brothers and sisters, we have come to the end. And we always stop and we always think about, how does the end feel? How does it feel to come to an end again? You know, think for instance, you're watching a movie, everyone, and you come to the end of the movie and you say, boy, that was fantastic. Okay, engaging, great movie. There are some you just sit there and you can't wait for it to come to the end. And when it finally comes to the end, you finally say, finally, that's over. Or sometimes it's just in between. And so, brothers and sisters, whenever we celebrate the Feast of Christ the King, you know the end is to come. This Sunday marks the end of our liturgical year. And so I ask you, how has it been? If you look back on this last year of grace, everyone, 2015, what can you say about it? You say this was a fantastic year in my life of faith. Or do you sit there and you say, boy, I'm glad it's over? Or are you somewhere in between? That's your answer to your question. Gratefully, everyone, once again, next week, when we come, it's all about a new beginning. And we celebrate the year of grace, then, of 2016. But I hope for us to realize, to get to the end, there has to be stories that lead us to the end. Where did it begin? How did the story begin? The plots this year, and the people that we heard. I'm just going to give you a quick review, everyone, of the stories that we heard in this last year of grace, and how those stories bring us now to the gospel of this Sunday. First, everyone, if you went back to the very beginning, we heard about a call. Peter and Andrew. Next comes James and John. With these four in tow, everyone, Jesus begins to heal those who are unclean spirits, a man who's deaf and mute. We hear about a leper and a paralytic who is healed. This healing power caught the attention of people, those who would follow him and those who would oppose him. We heard in this year of grace about miracles. We hear about the calming of the sea and the multiplication of the loaves and fishes. We heard, everyone, we learned about the four chosen disciples, everyone, and how they became 12. We heard parables. Remember the story, everyone? The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. We heard Jesus tell us to eat and drink. Eat my body. Drink my blood. Do this and you will live. And finally, everyone, we hear about how the disciples of Jesus just don't get it. Okay? Peter rebukes Jesus over his talk about suffering and death. And while Jesus predicts his suffering and death, what did the disciples discuss? Who's the greatest? People, this isn't all the stories. But as you hear them, hopefully it kind of says to you, oh, that's right. These are the stories we heard this last year. And lo and behold, we come to this last Sunday, and we hear about two people, Pilate and Jesus. There they are, eye to eye, face to face. And in the gospel of today, Pilate asked Jesus a question, are you a king? People, we claim Jesus is the king. Don't we? We say that much. The question I asked myself this last week was this. Why didn't Jesus just come out and say, yes, I am a king? Even when I read this gospel, sometimes I just don't quite get it. Okay? Bantering back and forth. You say I'm a king, for this I came. Why doesn't Jesus just come out and say, I am a king? Here's the answer. Think about it from Pilate's perspective. He only knows one idea of kingship, and it is this. It is based upon political power, and it is based upon violence. Okay? Remember who Pilate is. Pilate is the local representative of Rome in Palestine. So if Jesus comes out and he says, I am a king, and that's how Pilate understands kingship, well, you can understand where that's going to lead. Pilate looks at this man and says, if Jesus says, yes, I am a king, Pilate says, okay, here's a man who's after my power, and I'm going to attack the only way I attack, and that is through violence. Violence. Now do you know why Jesus didn't just come out and say, yes, Pilate, I am a king? Pilate couldn't get it. Now, how has this type of power worked? People, I want to talk a little bit about ISIS today. I know that the bombings in France, and we had more bombings this week. You know, we think about these radical groups. And when we think about ISIS, everyone, I hope we realize something very, very important. Could the next attacks be on our soil? How would you answer that? Could they be on American soil? I hope you're saying yes. Could there be members of ISIS already living in the United States? Well, we hope not. But I think the reality is, the answer is most likely what? Yes. You know, everyone, I want us to realize that we do not live on an island. We can't sit here and say, okay, the United States, Canada, North America, South America, they're surrounded by water and so we're safe. We live on some kind of an island here. Everyone, technology, communication, government, transportation has made this a global world. Okay? Just to help you realize that, I want to share with you these interesting pieces that maybe you've never even thought about, but here it is. When you wake up in the morning, everyone, and you look at the alarm clock, you have to realize this. The alarm clock was actually developed by a Swiss inventor. Throw off the sheets, and you realize that they were made from Egyptian cotton. Walk to the bathroom. Well, everyone, floor tiles were created in Italy. Okay, use the sink, the shower, and the toilet, and we realized porcelain was developed in China. Get dressed. Yes, everyone. Most often, when you look at it, guess where it's made? Southeast Asia. Eat breakfast. Hey, it says here dishes were probably made in England. Drink coffee. Guess where the coffee beans come from? They come from Brazil. So for us to sit here and say, we live on an island, no, we don't. Our world has become global. And when we hear about global ISIS, everyone, we realize how global ISIS has become. We hear about people willing to undergo arrest to join this radical group. And we sit here and say, why? It's almost like Pilate when he looks at Jesus, and why Jesus doesn't say I'm a king, because Pilate wouldn't get it. People, maybe it's religion. Maybe it's philosophy. Maybe it's what they stand for. We don't know. There's a reason there. Okay? But the one thing I want us to realize today, as Christians on this feast of Christ the King, is this. The people of ISIS share one thing in common with you and me. You know what it is? They are human beings. They are man and they are woman. And I want all of us to remember how the story of man and woman began. Okay? Let's go back to the beginning. Those of you at St. John Vianney School, those of you who celebrated First Reconciliation, you know this story well. Everyone, you go back to the beginning. Go back to way at the beginning. Story of Garden Eden. Adam and Eve are there. And of course they're told you can eat from any fruit, any tree, except for one, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So what do? Eve takes the apple, eats it, gives it to Adam, he eats it too. Okay, what's the first consequence of it? The first consequence, do you know the answer? They realize they are naked. They're naked. And so what do they make, everyone? They make what? Leaves. Now I'm going to tell you this, everyone, as we learned here, leaves don't make good clothing. Okay? They don't. As a matter of fact, if I don't know the difference between Adam and Eve, if I don't know the difference between plants, how would you know that the clothing I sew together isn't from poison ivy? Imagine what that would be like. Okay? God realizes it. He steps in, and what does he does? Okay, even though he's disappointed, he steps in and he gives them clothes. What are the clothes made from, everyone? They're made from animal skin. The question I ask the children is this: what did the animals have to do so that God could make clothing out of animal skin? The answer is this: they had to die. We never think about this, everyone, but one of the things that we can say is this: because of the consequence of sin, animals must die. With sin, violence came into the world. And that's what's so fascinating, as you have this standoff between Jesus and Pilate. Think about the two different politics. Okay, we have Pilate, who's about violence, Jesus, who's about forgiveness. We have Pilate, who's about political power, and we have Jesus, who's about a kingdom of truth. Who wins in the end? Hey, earthly standards, Pilate does. He flexes his muscle, and Jesus Christ dies. He's out of the picture. But by eternal standards, everyone, we say this: Christ is the King. In the end, his kingdom reigns. And here's what we have to realize about that kingdom, everyone. When it comes to ISIS and you and me, the one thing we share in common is this: we are man and woman. And God loves us. Whether we're American, whether we're ISIS. That's how the story ends. And the question I ask you today is, everyone, do you like the way the story ends? Do you like, everyone, the way God establishes a kingdom of forgiveness and a kingdom of truth? You got to answer that question. But in the end, Jesus stands here and says, it doesn't matter. My kingdom is about love. For people, all people, American and ISIS. That, everyone, is the story of that king. Like it or not, that we have to answer. But everyone, as we close today, we just remember this: our glory and our honor goes to that King, Jesus Christ the King. Let's honor that kingship, everyone. Let's remember how radical it is and what it really means as we set our sights, everyone, on the season of Advent.